welcome to this edition of Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mireles, and I am your host here in Harlingen, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley of deep South Texas. Got a great program lined up for you today. In just a little bit, our South Texas correspondent, Sandra Sanchez, is going to be leading a conversation with Mr. Nicholas Gildersleeve from Doctors Without Borders. He's going to be coming to us live from Tapachula, Mexico. That's a city in the southeastern state of Chiapas, near the border of Guatemala, as well as near the Pacific Ocean. So we're looking forward to that conversation in just a little bit. But first, as always, let's go ahead and start today's edition by taking a look at what's trending across the border. Starting with a city council meeting in New Orleans got wild last night when a group protesting Operation Catahoula Crunch were tossed out of the meeting. Listen to the screaming and shoving that took place. Now, the protesters were initially outside but went into the council chambers when it started raining. During the meeting's public comment session, one advocate explained to council members how the operation would impact the city. The group wanted city officials to stand up to ICE and Border Patrol. News crews at our sister station WGNO captured the moment things got heated once a councilman motioned to suspend public comment on the topic. The group was asked to leave due to them chanting and yelling, but they refused, which resulted in New Orleans PD officers having to carry individuals out of the room. Police say no arrests were made. In South Carolina, more than 300 of their Army National Guard soldiers are on their way to Washington, D.C. for a 90-day mission. It's all part of President Trump's operation, which he says will keep the Capitol safe and beautiful. The mission was planned a month ago, and this is the second time these troops have been deployed to D.C. There's already National Guard troops deployed to Washington, and yesterday, a U.S. appeals court handed a victory to the president's efforts to keep troops in Washington even longer. The ruling halted a lower court order that would have ended the deployment in the coming days. As we told you earlier this week, Mexico is entering a new era for its labor force. The government has officially announced a minimum wage increase starting in January, and President Claudia Sheinbaum is pushing for a 40-hour work week. Reporter Jorge Vela explains what it means to workers and businesses along the U.S.-Mexico border.
Mexico plans to reduce the work week from 48 to 40 hours, pending congressional approval.
We will reduce the work week by 2 hours starting in 2027, so that we are at 40 hours by 2030.
Araceli Garcia, who works at a factory known as a maquiladora in Reynosa, says the change is welcome.
It's good because we're always standing, since most of us work standing up, and it's many hours. Sometimes the shift is 12 hours, so it's very good that they reduce it.
The change is expected to not affect workers' pay. It comes alongside a new minimum wage increase set for January 1st, 13% nationwide, and 5% for border areas like Reynosa.
It's good because it had been many years without having a higher pay. And now we also won't have to be looking so much for overtime, because that's the only thing that helps us.
Not all are in agreement. Microparte CEO Jorge Martinez, who has businesses in Monterrey and McAllen, says this won't increase costs and affect small and medium businesses like his. Martinez points out these labor changes come amid high costs due to inflation.
In the end, the worker is going to get more, but things are going to cost more for them. So there isn't really a benefit because of a lack of structure in that sense, where for populist reasons, you raise the minimum wage and, oh, how great, but everything ends up becoming more expensive.
He adds that medium-sized businesses like his will carry most of the burden as large companies shift to automation, potentially reducing Mexico's international competitive edge.
One of Mexico's strongest advantages in terms of competitiveness is its labor force and the number of young graduates we already have who are prepared. And if you make these kinds of increases, everything moves upward and we stop being as competitive as Asia still is.
Martinez says he will not lay off workers and hopes productivity remains strong. He believes the new policies can help Mexicans earn more, buy more, and use credit to purchase goods. But he may have to raise prices.
Plainly, if the wage increase was by a certain amount, it has to be that exact amount directly. There will be no kind of advantage taken in a situation like this. We are going to be very, very measured, fair, and very meticulous in the process.
Working for you in McAllen, I'm Jorge Vela.
Thank you so much, Jorge, for your reporting on that. Stay with us. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, our South Texas correspondent, Sandra Sanchez, is going to lead that conversation with Mr. Nicholas Gildersleeve of Doctors Without Borders in Tapachula, Mexico. Stay with us. Border Report Live will be back in 2 minutes. And welcome back to Border Report Live. Joining me now is our South Texas correspondent, Sandra Sanchez, as well as our guest for today's program, Nicholas Gildersleeve with Doctors Without Borders in Tapachula, Mexico. Thanks for joining us today, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Hey, we're so lucky to talk to you directly from Tapachula, which is on the border, Mexico's southern border with Guatemala. Now, Nicholas, you're the base director there. This is a big stopping point for migrants. It's always been a migration point for people coming into Mexico. But recently, you all issued a press release that called it, quote, a dead-end border town for migrants. What's happening? What's going on there?
Yes, good afternoon, Sandra. Thanks for having me in your program today. Basically, what is happening now is there's still a high influx of migrant coming in to Mexico, but Tapachula is a place where they will stop the journey for a few months or even years because of an administrative issue. They're not allowed now to go further up north in Mexico if they don't have all the proper paperwork with their migration status.
Okay. So any idea how many people are there in Tapachula right now waiting, and what are the conditions like?
The numbers, I think, I don't have access to the numbers of migrants here, but what we have seen so far is every day in our clinics, we have medical clinics. Doctors Without Borders is a medical organization that works all around the world. And in the clinics where we attend patients, we can see the three main countries now that are coming in our clinic come first from Haiti, then Cuba, and then Venezuela. And basically what we see is they have arrived within a few days or within a few weeks. So first thing they do when they arrive, basically, they don't know what are the procedure, where to go, what to do, and they have to go to the local authorities to see what are the procedure exactly to get their asylum status. And I think that's the main challenge now, because before they would get the paperwork and they could go through the whole country, but now it literally stops in Tapachula. If they try to go up further up north, they will be sent back either to the border or to Tapachula.
Hence a dead-end border town. So walk us through these steps. What do they have to do? What government agency do they have to apply to? What do they have to show? What kinds of documentation?
So basically, in their journey, for example, we have talked firsthand, for example, with Asians that recently arrived. They either leave Haiti or Republic Dominican, and then they take a flight to Panama, then Nicaragua, and then they go by land all the way up to Tapachula. And that trajectory, usually they have to buy a package. No, they buy a package, and that package will insert them, that they will be able to go all the way up to Tapachula. But the challenge they have on their journey is mainly today is mainly, for example, in Guatemala, where they will be stopped either by authorities or by different armed groups that will ask them money, or they will be also victim of different forms of violence on their journey. So we have to see that they're leaving their country like Haiti, where there's a high level of violence, and they will still go through some violence in their process all the way up to Tapachula.
Okay, so let's, no, go ahead.
Yeah, and then just on their paperwork, basically they have to arrive in an institution that it's called the Comar here in Mexico, where it's the first step for them to get their paperwork. So basically they arrive in that institution, they give their coordinate, and then they will wait a few months for the process to start. And then after that, they go through a process of getting signature. So every two weeks, they need to report to those offices to make sure that they're here in town, in Tapachula, till the day that they will be either accepted or not to stay in the country.
Okay, let's unpack it a little bit. You said a package, a travel package. Are you talking about paying coyotes to bring them up toward the United States when you say package?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. That's what they share with us. They share the amounts, and they have to pay. And sometimes they will get the security to get all the way through Tapachula, and sometimes they will not have that success. And some countries accept them to go through, like in transit. For example, Honduras and Nicaragua, but arriving in Guatemala, that's where they have most challenges in their journey today when they go from Panama.
When you meet people, are they aware of the asylum policy changes in the United States and even in Mexico, or are they surprised when they get to Tapachula and they're stopped?
I think they don't necessarily know. What they know is they want to reach Mexico for their dream to go up further up north. But now they're resigned to stay here. Like they're resigned to stay here, and for some of them, it's a surprise to arrive here. And they say, if I ask asylum, then I will be able to continue my journey and go up north like it was in the past. But today, the wall is not in the border of Mexico and the United States. There's an administrative wall now here in the border of Guatemala and Mexico.
Wow, that's really profound. You know, we don't think of it that way, right? Are they allowed to work at all if they apply the proper paperwork? What can they do?
Basically, when they arrive, they don't have the proper paperwork, and they're afraid to get arrested by the local authorities because until you start your process, you're an illegal migrant here in the country. So by the time they start the process, then they can start working properly and having access to the different government services. But the first few weeks, they're quite afraid to even move around Tapachula and to go and access the different services. I think there's for them also this insecurity, of being in Tapachula and arriving here and not necessarily knowing what is the process and what they can do.
You mentioned Cubans, Haitians, and I think you said Venezuelans, the other group, right? Mostly.
Exactly. That's what we have seen mostly, but we can still see from all around the world, from Africa, from Middle East, from Latin America. And I think, again, last week, we had people going through the Darien, some Ecuadorian, for example, that were going through the Darien and going up here. So it's not because there's a wall today between Mexico and the United States that people will stop coming.
Are you seeing people coming through the Darien Gap then still? Because I know that several government authorities have been saying that the number of migrants crossing that very dangerous stretch of land that includes Panama, where there's no cell service and people get very injured and sick and subject to violence, extortion. The numbers of people crossing there has gone down. But are you still seeing people who come through the Darien?
We still see, and we used to have a project also not long ago, also in the border in the Darien with the Doctors Without Borders in Colombia and Panama. So we still see, but for sure the numbers are going down. The numbers are going really up. And we're getting much more Haitian, for example, and those the Haitians now, they have the route, they have the route with the plane and coming all the way up here. And that's a community that we see more and more that was not there as high as before.
So I know you mentioned it. Say it again. Where do they fly to from Haiti?
So basically, if they manage to get on a plane from Haiti, because it's not the same as going on a commercial flight from Republic Dominican, the flights are out of Haiti. It's a bit chaotic. I was told yesterday from a patient that they sometimes sell 200 spots on the plane and there's only 100 seats.
Wow.
So the first person who arrived that gets the spot and will be able to get on the plane. And then their journey doesn't stop there. They go through Panama, then Nicaragua. Then they have to go by road, and they have to go through three countries, through Nicaragua, Honduras, and then through Guatemala. And I think that's the challenge that they have. They're leaving a country where they face high level of violence, and they still go through some levels of violence through their journey up to here. So when they arrive here, some of them are like, oh, it's much more peaceful than my country, but still today there's different groups that controls the flux of migration, like we were saying earlier.
Still very, very dangerous. When would you say you started noticing this bigger surge of Haitians coming to the border there?
I would say in the last month, the last few months, we really noticed that, because before there was those big caravans. No, in the last year, we used to accompany them, giving medical and mental health services to them on their journey up north. But this has stopped since the beginning of like mid October, were the last caravan, and so I would say the last month or two, we have seen a rise in the Haitian arriving here in the country.
Here in South Texas, we noticed a big number of Haitians that started coming in the past few years. Noticed it in the Del Rio sector back in 2020. They were really coming in. Suddenly, all the migrant shelters were scrambling to find French speakers to communicate with them. But we have not really seen, our border is really slowed down now. So that's interesting. Do you think that they will find a way, to make it north, or are they really just stuck in Tapachula?
I think, unfortunately for them, like for their role, they're stuck here for a while, because what we have seen, like we have seen in the last year, there's been international aid cut from the Trump government and from other governments all around the world. And this has really, really affected the activities of international organizations, NGOs, and all that. So there's still an influx of migrants, but there's less services available for them. So the process will get longer and longer. Like when they start the process, there's less funding to attend those migrants that they did that before. So I think this is also something we have to take into account. And another thing, for example, for the Asian, one of their biggest barriers, like you were saying, it was about the French, but it's not only the French, it's the Creole. Mm-hmm. Like the Creole from Haiti, like most of them don't speak Spanish, don't speak French, and they arrive here. Like most of the Latin American people that come and migrate here, they will have access to the service and be able to exchange and to have proper medical care. But for them, that's their biggest challenge. We have seen, for example, for us this week, there are some patients we didn't manage to see because we didn't have enough translator in our team. No, sometimes that's a challenge, and I think we have to focus also on that vulnerability. It's not just about the violence, but it's also about how you have access to the service.
And as this nonprofit organization, Doctors Without Borders, known throughout the world, what are the cases? What are you seeing? What are the ailments? What are the struggles? What are the medical or mental health needs that you are seeing of these people there in Tapachula?
I mean, our project in Tapachula, the main focus is on victims of torture, victim of sexual violence, victim of violence, and with all those different components that comes with it. Like last week, for example, we did a medical clinic and we received some sexual violence victim in the last 72 hours of their journey. So then you have to address that quite quickly, for the transmission of HIV or other infectious disease. And I think also it's about the trauma on the mental health side. The trauma is quite high because they're leaving their country with years and years and years of violence, and they arrive in a country here that there's still violence present. It's not like if you arrive in Canada or in other European country, you arrive in Mexico where there's still high level of violence. So I think that's our main focus is victim of torture, victim of violence, victim of sexual violence, and also mental health problems.
Do you have enough supplies? What does your organization need, and what do you think the solution is to help these people?
I think the solution is for the government to have a more open, open heart. Open heart in their policy, because migrant will find a way. If it's not by land, they will come by sea, and by sea they will be exposing themselves much more also if they come by the ocean, if the land is blocked. So migration will continue. So we have to adapt our services all around the world for migrants, especially for access to healthcare, shelter, education. And for example, in the access to healthcare here, yes, it's free access to healthcare, but after they see a doctor or a nurse in public service, after that, the challenge they have is access to proper medicines. And that's what we've seen. Sometimes we refer to the hospital, and the next day they refer back for us to give them the medicines.
When you say government to have a bigger heart, Mexican government, the U.S. government, both, which?
I think it all comes, for example, it all comes from the U.S. policy and the European policy that we have seen in the last 10 years, more or less 10 and 15 years. And I think the challenge there is to make sure that those policies are much more human, and that we will not expose them. We're exposing children, pregnant women, young kids to go through those journeys. Again, yesterday I was looking at the news here, and in the river crossing between Guatemala and Mexico, 2 kids died again in drowning, because they want to cross illegally. They don't want to cross legally because then they will not be able to cross. So all those policies that they make up north or in Europe has accounted for a lot of death on the journey that those migrants are coming through.
Wow, really shocking. And you mentioned policies. The government, the United States, just yesterday announced that the work permits were going to be reduced from 5 years to 18 months for migrants who are here to work. So, all that is information to filter down to the people down there that I'm sure aren't aware who are trying to come here.
Exactly, and not having access to the information. I mean, their dream is to have better condition. And what we have seen is how they manage to do this journey is because they're sponsored most of the time by family members in the United States, and that's how they manage to do that journey. And they want to get, everybody in the world want to get a better living conditions, and to go through the Darien or through the ocean or through those different dangerous places. I mean, it's because they're desperate for a more peaceful life.
We've been speaking with Mr. Nicholas Gildersleeve with Doctors Without Borders in Tapachula, Mexico. Unfortunately, we are out of time. A very incredible conversation. Hopefully, we can bring you back on in the future, sir, and discuss this a little further, because I think it's hard for people at home to really grasp the danger when we're talking about places like the Darien Gap and the things that these people are trying to get to in search of a better life. So, again, we appreciate your time today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Well, stay with us. Border Report Live is back in 2 minutes. And welcome back to Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Midelis. If you missed our conversation that Sandra Sanchez was leading with Doctors Without Borders Director in Tapachula, Mexico, Mr. Nicholas Gildersleeve, remember, you can always stay informed on the story shaping the U.S.-Mexico border in audio form, as Border Report Live brings you real-time updates, expert insights, and voices from both sides of the border on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, the iHeartRadio app, and on YouTube. I wanted to bring in our South Texas correspondent, Sandra Sanchez, one more time to talk about a story that she's been working on. Tell us about it.
Yeah, actually, really fun story. Yesterday, I went out to far western Starr County to the Salineno Wildlife Preserve. This is right on the border. You could throw a stone from the gate entrance to the Rio Grande overlooking Tamaulipas, Mexico, and there is a brown jay bird, believed to be only one of 9 in the entire United States. And he actually, I did a live shot, or a look live shot. I was standing there with my camera and I was whispering because he was just over my left shoulder and I didn't want to scare him. And they'd kind of given me permission to step into the zone where people are really not supposed to step because they don't want to spook the birds. But, this is a bird that is not endangered, and it is a species that lives in Mexico, but it doesn't come north of the river very often. It has not been seen has not been seen here at the Wildlife Preserve since 2012. So there are people coming from all over the world to try to get a glimpse of this. And you know what? It's about 3 times bigger than a green jay. Everybody knows South Texas and the Rio Grande Valley for our green jays. You find them at Santa Ana National Wildlife reserve. Well, this brown jay blends in with the trees, and he's very food aggressive. He knocks the other birds out as he goes for those seeds. But it was really fascinating, the conversations I have with people who came to see it. And, we ran out of time today. We'll try to get that video on the show soon, but you can see it on borderreport.com.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Sandra. We appreciate it, and we appreciate you getting that guest from Tapachula, Doctors Without Borders. Incredible conversation there. Yeah. All right. Well, that is going to do it for us today. We appreciate you being here so much. Until next time, my name is Rudy Mireles for Sandra Sanchez here in South Texas and the rest of the team across the border. Have a good one.